you guys just saw those ducks flying away. Well, we wanted to capture them a little closer, but the male ducks who are breeding more females and winning more at life have brighter colored heads. The ducks that aren't breeding as many females, their colors get all dull and they look all rickety. And that's kind of a good metaphor for yourself. When you're winning, you're gonna keep winning. Dopamine, when it's elevated, challenge feels more effortless. When testosterone is higher, challenge feels more effortless. So at the core of what it is you're doing with your craft or with your life or with your lifestyle, you're either in a massive upward spiral or you're going into a downward spiral. And that's not to say that when I say effortless, it's gonna feel like the challenges are feeling like less effort. It doesn't mean that there's no effort. You should always feel a little tinge of adrenaline and pressure before any kind of challenge you're about to endure. That's good. If you're not feeling that, that means you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough. But that being said, are you feeling overwhelmed? Or are you feeling like you're gaining energy from challenge? That's the core audit you need to do. And when you're thriving, you become like the equivalent of the duck with a bright head. And when you're coping, you become like the duck with the dark colored head and become all rickety. So, you know, if you want your internal colors to be bright, you have to get into an upward spiral. Now, transitioning into an upward spiral is always the difficult part. Once you're in the upward spiral, when your dopamine's elevated, you're winning, it's easier to keep winning. But it's that transition from the downward spiral into the upward spiral, which is difficult. And the problem is that downward spiral is a self-reinforcing identity. It's almost like there's a parasite on your brain. It's almost like a false identity, a false sense of self that is reinforcing this negative downward spiral. It is also because your DNA wants to save time and energy. Your DNA doesn't want to exert testosterone and more dopamine because that would require you to use energy. But once you have it, life gets easier and you become more intense. You can attack challenges better, so on and so forth. So if you're currently in a downward spiral, I'd urge you to ask yourself how you're going to shift that into an upward spiral. And usually, so it's like you're going down. How do we slow that down growth and slowly start making it get you into some upward momentum? Well, what you have to do is you have to think about how you're going to put yourself in an environment that gives you no way out, to where your body is forced to excrete testosterone, to where your brain is forced to excrete dopamine. What is that going to look like? That's probably not going to be your little accountability group on WhatsApp, you know? It's probably going to be putting yourself in a situation to where you're forced to not have any stimulus that distracting you, aka your Instagram's taken away, your YouTube's taken away, your TikTok's taken away, your internet vices are taken away, and so on and so forth. And you're forced to have your dopamine kind of reset, which will make you more focused. And then with that additional focus, you're confronted with challenge. You have some kind of challenge you have to confront. And then with that challenge, you have accountability around you that makes sure that you have to endure that challenge. I'll give you an example. There's Commander Mark Devine runs this program called Kokoro. And Kokoro is the civilian version of a Navy SEAL Hell Week. So imagine we're on the coast of San Diego, and this is in Colorado, but the water's actually colder here than San Diego, obviously. But San Diego waters are actually pretty cold during the winter. And you're forced to do like link arms, and you're forced to just endure the waves hitting your head again and again and again. And you're shivering and you're cold and it's challenging. Your brain and your body will be forced to use its resources if you're under that kind of stress. And because you have other people that are doing it with you, you'll step up to the plate. Now you're also forced to like press logs over your head. You're forced to do, wear heavy packs and do these long hikes throughout the night. You're forced to run. You're forced to do, they wake you up in the middle of the night with cold water and so on and so forth. And you have no stimulus. You're not allowed to look at your phone, and you're enduring challenge. You don't have to necessarily do that. But what is your version of having that accountability around you to where you're forced to confront challenge and you're forced to draw your mental resources and your hormonal resources, your masculine mental resources and your masculine hormonal resources. And once you give yourself a perspective like that, a reference experience of facing challenge like that, then the normal challenges that you have throughout your life will feel easier. And you'll start to shift into that upward spiral. All of a sudden, it won't be so hard to do basic things like clean your room or go to the gym once you face the civilian equivalent of a Navy SEAL Hell Week. It'll be easier. It'll be easier. So ask yourself, am I in a downward spiral? If you are, you have to aggressively shift that, because that downward spiral is reinforcing the identity of a loser. So how are you gonna shift that into an upward spiral? Once you're in an upward spiral, your dopamine builds up more, your testosterone builds up more, challenge feels easier, wins come with less effort, but that shift is difficult. The shift from the downward spiral to the upward spiral is difficult. So what is that accountability gonna look like? How are you gonna face challenge? How are you gonna rebuild your dopamine? And how will you give yourself no way out to where you are forced to get into that upward spiral? So that's what I'll leave you off with, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Trunks with the sauce.